All right, well, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Ruby today. Ruby Stryker is a passionate realtor and dedicated community builder and champion of Spring Street Buck Park Garden. Her love for connecting with people drives her community involvement and her real estate career. Her goal for the garden at Spring Street Buck Park is simply for it to be a safe and inclusive, welcoming space for herself, volunteers, neighbors, and friends. Ruby has participated on administrative level for Equal Ground Community Gardens, including event committees and volunteering outside of her role as guardian champion, which she has successfully championed for 2 years. So welcome, Ruby, and at this point, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be here and to share this presentation. So today we're going to be talking about winter garden prep. So we'll just go through a number of steps that is recommended to do in order to close down your garden for this season. I don't know about all of you guys here, but winter garden prep is something that it comes with a bit of a bittersweet feeling for me. It is part of every season, but also it means that the garden, um, the garden needs to be put away for the year. And then we have another 6 months before the excitement of spring. So we're going to talk about a few different things. First being harvesting, what needs to be harvested, then garden cleanup, what to do with the leaves, fertilizer, winter sowing, inventory and planning, figuring all what you need for your next season. And then we'll talk a little bit, we touched on it briefly, but we'll talk a little bit about Equal Grounds, who it is, who we are, what we do, and where we can be found in the community. So on to the next slide. So harvesting, there are a number of frost sensitive plants that need to be harvested before the frost hits. So normally in our area, in our zone, the frost is in around the beginning to mid-October. So October 11th is kind of the this year what they've suggested is the first frost date. We've had an unseasonably warm year, so it didn't hit. I'm not sure if it's hit yet, but it's uh it's been really nice and warm this year. It is recommended to harvest tomatoes, peppers, beans, tender flowers, eggplants. Much of the produce from your garden is recommended to be pulled out before the first frost, um, or harvested, I'm sorry, before the first frost. As soon as the frost hits these sensitive plants, it will destroy the plant. The plant will die, and along with that, the fruit. There are a number of frost-resistant plants, which actually end up becoming, they enjoy the cooler weather. Some of them get even sweeter after frost, and so it's fine for them to remain a little bit longer. You often hear of them being planted early in the spring and second or third plantings happening later in the fall as well. So examples of that are lettuce, kale, broccoli, cabbage, radish, spinach. Much of the green leafy plants really enjoy the cooler weather, and they don't do well in a warm climate or bright sunny weather. And then there are perennials, which they don't need to be harvested, but certain work needs to be done to prune them back. Examples of perennials are sage, lavender, chives, raspberries, strawberries, or rhubarb. Um, at the end of the season, trim these plants back. Don't pull them from the soil because they'll come back and be beautiful again next year, and they can continue to live for years and years. And then biennials are plants that normally the first year is the first year is a productive year. The second year is often for seeds or things like that, but they will come back a second year. Um, and examples of that are parsley, kale, Brussels sprouts, or celery. So let's go on to seed saving. Oops. We're going to move on to seed types right now. There are a few different types of seed. And when we move on to the seed saving part, we'll discuss what's best for saving as well. But it's really important to understand the various seed types. First being the heirloom. We've often heard of this. This is the trusted plant. Seeds have been passed down for over 50 years. They've been cultivated carefully and thoughtfully to retain desired traits. So there's a lot of varieties of heirloom tomatoes. That is one example of, you know, that if you've selected an heirloom seed, that it was likely the same heirloom seed that your grandmother or grandfather sowed, you know, years and years ago. A hybrid hybrid seeds are plants that have been cross-pollinated to create new genetic traits. It's a very common practice in today's society. The plants that have grown from hybrid saved seeds will take on the DNA of one of the parents. And then there's open pollination, and this is, you'll see this a lot with varieties of squash. If you plant, like, for example, two different varieties of zucchini, or even a zucchini with a cucumber in the same garden bed, sometimes they'll cross-pollinate and create a brand new form of fruit. So this happens through nature. And so that's why it's important to keep similar varieties of plants isolated from each other, because it happens with pollination in the breeze. When you're considering seed saving, there's a few different questions that you need to consider before choosing what seeds you want to save. First of all, what do you like to eat? And I've made this mistake many times myself, because I love gardening. I love the idea of trying new things. And then at the end of the season, I'll be left with all of this fruit that I didn't really follow through to do the research on how I was going to use it, or if my family would like it, etc. So that's a really important thing to consider, is, will you eat it? So before choosing which seed to save, make sure that it's something that you will eat and that you've researched to understand how, you know, how you can use it in recipes and all of that. Will you have to sacrifice the crop? So many crops, I mean, everything will go to seed, but many crops will be sacrificed in order for the seeds to come. Lettuce is a great example, because if we let it bolt and flower, those flowers will then, will then create the seed pods. But as soon as it bolts, it's no longer edible. So you're sacrificing the crop to get the seed, and you want to, if you're planning to do that, you're going to want to make sure that you plant enough extra, that there is a portion of your crop that you're willing to sacrifice in order to allow it to become seed. Are they sterile? So this doesn't happen too often, but if a plant has been genetically modified, sometimes the seeds within that plant are sterile. This can happen with the food that we find in the grocery store. So it may not be considered a great idea to, for example, to plant a pepper crop from the seeds from a grocery store, because again, they may be sterile. And then, are they hybrid or heirloom? This is your choice. If you understand, hybrid versus heirloom, and what type of plant you want to produce at the end of the day, and if you have the flexibility for that risk. Seed processing. So there are two different types of ways to process seeds, and it's with wet seed processing, you'll harvest the seed wet. So a tomato is an excellent example, because the seeds are within the tomato, and there's all that muck that you have to get through to get to the seeds. They'll never dry out until you pull the seed from the tomato. And again, in cases like with the tomato, and many times with the zucchini as well, you'll have to sacrifice the fruit in order to retain the seed. And then they need to go through a wet processing process where you pull them from the fruit, you pull the seeds from the fruit, and then you ferment them by putting the seeds along with that goop into water for a good 24 to 72 hours. and then wash very well and dry. This is very important because the coating on the seed contains moisture or retains moisture. So you need to get rid of that coating in order to dry it thoroughly to prevent it from rotting. Dry seed processing is a little bit more straightforward. You simply harvest the seed when it's dry. So you let it remain on the plant until it's completely dry. And when you're sure that it's completely dry, you remove it from the plant and store it in a paper bag is usually the best, but you could add it, put it in a jar as well. There is always the risk of moisture in that seed. So it's a good idea to consider adding a silica pack. Even when you've made sure that it's as absolutely dry as possible, its moisture can be found in any small places. And now on to garden cleanup. So once you've gathered the seeds that you want, you've harvested your last plants, you've got a garden that doesn't look too pretty anymore because it's at the end of its season, and now what to do with it. Um, so I'm going to go through a few different suggestions. Um, leaves, the leaves that fall on the ground, it's really a lot of people love to rake up those leaves and put them away, give them to the city for processing. But really, it's a really good idea to consider leaving them. You can place them on your garden actually because it will provide a really good insulation. And then as they break down, it adds nutrients into the soil. So it's really it's good to consider leaving them where they are or adding them to your garden for that extra insulation. The next thing you're going to want to do is prune. We talked a little bit about this in the last when we talked about the perennials, but pruning or wrapping up the plants that will remain over the winter. So you'll need to do your research to ensure that you know what likes to be pruned. Um, cut these plants back. Once the green is gone from the plants, cut them back. For the shrubs and anything else that remains in your garden that's rather prominent, you'll want to wrap it to make sure that the winter winds don't damage it. Another suggestion that we follow at Equal Grounds is no dig, no till. Um, Avoid disturbing the soil as much as possible and remove as little from the garden as possible. Continue to feed the garden by adding nutrients back into the soil, such as compost, etc. But digging in the soil disturbs the microorganisms underneath the soil, and it can be considered an unhealthy way of gardening. And then the last thing is there are a number of plants in your garden that might enjoy being indoors over the winter rather than dying throughout the winter. So herbs like rosemary, peppers, hibiscus, some need dormancy and some would do very well in the winter or inside over the winter. Fertilizing. Producing your own compost is really easy. I touched on it briefly in the last segment, but all you really need is a bit of space, water, and time um, to create your own compost. That would take an entire second presentation, but it's really not that difficult at all, and it's easy to look into if that's something that you're interested in. If you don't have the space or room or desire to create your own compost, it's recommended that you find a trusted supplier. The City of Brantford, Black Swallow, or local farms all have um, compost that you can grab. We use it at Equal Grounds. We take compost from the City of Brantford, and it's a really easy and great resource. The City of Brantford takes the leaves and all of the debris from throughout Brantford and creates the compost that way. Mulch is another fantastic way to fertilize. Also, a fantastic way to keep the insulate the ground as well. During the summer months, it prevents the weeds from coming up. Mulch can also be found from the city of Brantford. Local tree farms, local tree removal companies often turn those trees into mulch as well. So there's many different spots that you can find mulch, free or very cheap, within the city. And then another great way to fertilize that we don't hear of as often is using a cover crop. So the cover crop does a number of very good things to benefit the soil. It adds the nutrients back into the soil, as well as it provides that insulation for the soil. Examples of a good cover crop would be rye, legumes, radish, turnip, or other brassicas. If you plant in late October or early November, water it until it becomes about an inch tall, and then just leave it. It provides that insulation. It feeds the nutrients back into the soil, and then at the end of the when you're ready to move on and plant it, you're digging it under into the soil to continue to add those nutrients in. Winter sowing. This is a really interesting topic. Again, we're only going to touch on it very, very briefly. It's not something that I have personally done yet, so I'd be really interested in hearing how other people's experience are with this. And it's something that I've read a lot about. Winter sowing is fun because it's a late winter project that you can do. So to get yourself excited for spring, you can sow it and then you forget about it. So you can take, mostly it's milk jug tops, but it could be really any jugs that you have that are food safe. You cut them off around the top, add drainage holes at the bottom, fill it with nutrient-rich soil, sow the seeds, water it very, very well, put the lid back on and place it in a spot that gets a lot of sun, and then just forget about it. Literally just leave it and come back and look at it in early spring. In many cases, the seeds will be really, really dense and will need to be separated into larger containers while they continue to grow. Again, it's just a fun and interesting way to keep ourselves, especially in those dreary winter months, to keep ourselves reminded of spring and focused on the fun that comes in spring. This process is called stratification. The cold creates those really strong roots in the new plants that will help them to become very robust plants later in the season. Now let's talk a little bit about propagation. If you're looking to split some of your plants, the best time is in the late fall, just prior to dormancy. Lavender, sage, yarrow, hostas are all examples of plants that do well when they're split. And all you need to do is gently divide those roots and place them in their new home. And fertilize well, and then allow the dormancy to take over. Examples of additional plants that can be propagated in dormancy are figs, roses, or gooseberries. What you do is remove a cutting, place it in the soil, and in the spring, if the cutting is successful, it will start to grow. And now, our final chapter is talking about inventory and planning. We're not done yet. It is time to move inside, but before we do that, let's evaluate the equipment that we have so we can be ready. Sometimes late fall is a great time to get good deals on garden equipment, so keep that in mind, but also to be ready for when spring comes. So evaluate your equipment. Is anything broken? Do you need to upgrade? Do you need to order more gloves? Are your pruners sharp? We've got excellent sharpening services here in Brantford as well. And then it's important to store all of our equipment, or before storing all of our equipment, clean it well with alcohol and store it in a dry place. Metal equipment needs to be stored in a dry location again. Plastic pots, it's really important to keep them in a warm and dry location as well. If you leave plastic out over the winter, it becomes brittle. And then, of course, your seeds need to be stored in again, preferably a paper bag, but definitely a dry and cool location. Um, and then any leftover soil that you have needs to be out of the rain, or the rain will wash it away. Um, and this has not been updated. Be sure to record any final thoughts about the 2025 season to start planning for 2026. Most local seed companies require the orders to be in by the end of the year. So this is your time to write down everything, all of the pros and cons of the season that you had, any journal entries that you have, any thoughts, any desires, or wish lists for next year. Before you forget, I have made this mistake time and time and time again. I'll remember, I really wanted this kind of strawberries that I saw over at this farm, or something like that. I'll remember it. I know I'll remember it come spring. It never works, not for me anyway. I always forget. The best time to record your thoughts on your garden from that season is as you're closing the garden out, or at the end of that season. And so a little bit about Equal Grounds. Equal Grounds Community Gardens was established in 2009. It merged and partnered with the city of Brantford in 2015. It was entirely volunteer run until October 2022. And for several years, we had Taylor on board with us. We still have Taylor on board with us. And she was the only, she was the Equal Grounds coordinator, the only paid position that we had with Equal Grounds. Um, and we're back to being a volunteer run again. Um, our goal is to bring equal gardening and food access to everyone throughout Brantford. So for me personally, Equal Grounds is really important, because it not only brings food to everyone in Brantford, it gives everyone the ability to have a place to go, have a community, a local community, um, where they can just, like, I love walking by my gardens and seeing the watering pots just kind of scattered, and knowing that the kids were there, an hour ago watering. Like, it's a place where everyone feels free to just be a part of. It's not my garden, it's not the volunteers' garden, it's everyone's garden. And so that to me is incredibly important. So not just for the food is fantastic, but to bring that same joy that I get in working in the soil, to my neighbors and friends within the community. There are several facets to Equal Grounds. We have the community gardens, which are run by the community for the community. We currently facilitate 30 plus gardens within the city of Brantford and also Brant County. The gardens are free to use. We don't do plot rentals. Again, it's just anyone can come and just be a part of it. You can register as a volunteer if you'd like, and I'm happy, if anyone is interested, I'm happy to provide information on that. Or you can just visit casually. No, there needs to be no commitment. We also provide plants, seeds, compost, and support to home gardeners who choose to have host gardens. They donate 20% of their harvest to the community. So that's another way that you can be a part of Equal Grounds while still having your own garden if you'd like, and receiving the benefits of the host garden. And then we have the Greenhouse and Learning Center. We are so excited that we now have a greenhouse and learning center. It is a fantastic space located at the Woodman Park. We are excited about classes and workshops coming up, as well as another large gardening space. If you guys have the opportunity to visit the Woodman Park, that space has come into use this past year now. The garden is magical there. It is absolutely fantastic, and the greenhouse, Taylor has done so much work there to bring that to fruition. We're just in awe of Taylor's ability to pull that together, but also the garden space itself. It's not just Taylor, it's not just Eagle Grounds, it's the community. It's everybody just loves to be there, loves to take part in it. And it really is a truly magical place and how it brings people together. And a little bit about me. Thank you for your introduction at the beginning of this. I am a realtor local to the Brantford and Brant County areas. I am also a garden champion with Equal Grounds, and I've done extra to help Taylor out here and there in administrative work and all of that. I love Taylor. I love Equal Grounds. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be a part of it. Um, and if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to take any questions. But that's where it's at.